John Oliver, who who got onto his show and basically said everyone seems shocked about a 96-year-old dying of natural causes. And it got blocked by Sky. They edited it out, the UK version, but they kept it in the US. And then, interestingly, John Oliver also said that the greatest thing the Queen could have ever done was die to give Liz Truss a breather from her horrendous interviews that she did sort of for the first 10 days. And you're like, wow. But he said it, and it's interesting because obviously John did a lot of stand-up, and I think he still does a bit of stand-up as well as a show. But it was interesting that he just came out and said it. It's interesting he said it in America, which are essentially, in many ways, our cousins. So it's like our cousins can say this, and they separated from the crown, they separated from Parliament. So should they be showing more respect? He also pointed out that Domino's released a statement saying the world of Domino's is in mourning over the Queen's death. And then if you looked at the American version of Domino's, they're like, buy one, get one free, or get pizza half price from Domino's in America. And you're like, right. So the world of Domino's really isn't in mourning. It's just, and it's interesting because social media has broken all of this down. It's like the UK can be in mourning, but no one else can.
Yeah.
Or no one else will be, or no one else cares.
I found that quite interesting, watching all the different social medias and seeing the response, and seeing particularly the response from Americans and Australians and obviously people from, former colonial places, India and parts of Africa and stuff, and they had obviously very different responses, and some of them were quite, well, hang on, we don't care at all, and or even we're quite happy, or we find this, almost funny or whatever, and that was quite, and it was quite interesting because as someone who considers myself, I think I am probably a Republican in a sort of soft sense of, I think the monarchy as an institution doesn't really make any sense, but also there are loads of things that don't really make any sense, but they're still there, and it would be difficult to change them. I think revolutions always lead to, bad effects for some people, and so the idea of sort of tearing everything down and starting again is not something that hugely I think is a great idea all the time. But I do think the monarchy is a bit of a silly idea, and certainly wouldn't start with it if we were starting again. But I still had that sort of residual Britishness of when I saw some of those responses of going, oh, come on, that's a bit much. Come on, give us a minute. And then I had to sort of check myself and go, no, it's fine. Like, they can have that response. That's fine. In the same way that it did feel a bit like that thing of, you can say what you like about your own family, but if you hear someone else saying about it, suddenly you get a bit defensive. And I did feel that in myself, and I found that quite interesting, that response of like, oh yeah, there's definitely so, and I think that's just because she was around for so long. She was a part of all of our life. I was watching a film the other day about the Cray brothers, and they were talking about the Queen in it. They mentioned something about, oh, God save the Queen or something. And I thought, this is set in 1967 or something. And she'd been on the throne for 15 years, but that point, and it's, and this is well before, and it just reminded me just how long she had been this massive presence in everyone's lives. And so it's totally understandable that there was a big response. And yeah.
Like even if William were to take over immediately, he wouldn't have reigned as long as her. What was it? She was 23, 25 when she took over?
25, I think, yeah.
So, yeah.
And that won't happen again. That won't happen again probably in our lifetimes. Well, almost certainly in our lifetimes, unless something very bizarre happens. There's not going to be a young monarch for a long time. And we don't know. But also, we've all lived with an older monarch. We've all lived in a world with an old monarch. So we're sort of used to that. But there was that huge period of time before that where they had a young monarch, and it did feel like the end of something, like an end of an era. Well, it was the end of an era, the end of something that I don't think any of us quite know what's coming next in that.
Yeah, it's strange. I definitely felt like that. It was like a sense of, I don't know, I think of mortality. I was like really suddenly aware that I know that we're all going to die at some point, but like it was really, really aware of that. And I think it doesn't matter regardless of whether you whether you follow the monarchy or don't or whatever. It was like there was a sense of, oh, I've grown up with this, and this person is now not around. And there was almost a sense of, I don't know what to do with that. Like, I don't know how. It was really emotional, weirdly. Like, and I wasn't expecting to kind of feel that way, but it is. like you say, if it's someone attacking your own family, it must have meant, whether or not you follow it or you don't, it must have meant a lot more to a lot more people than we kind of guessed, I suppose.
I've been watching the new Game of Thrones show, and it's reminded me of that a little bit, that we've had a monarch for many, many years who, whatever you think of the monarchy, did monarchy well, like did being a queen well. She never lost her temper in public. We never really knew what she thought about anything. She was pretty good at being apolitical, although I know there was some, suggestion that there were elements of that wasn't true. But she was pretty, people could genuinely do the thing that you're meant to be able to do with a monarch, of sort of project themselves onto her and project her, whether you're on the left or the right or centre or whatever, you could sort of see her as a representative somehow of the country and or the nation and all that kind of stuff. And people generally liked her and all those sorts of things. But we've had a load of rubbish monarchs. Like, they've been like really bad guys, mostly bad kings. We've had a hell of a lot of bad kings. And it's like, I feel like the country has sort of grown up now with this kind of very specific, quite sort of motherly and then grandmotherly figure who's kind of basically kind of nice in a sense. And now we're in a world where that's maybe not the case anymore. And King Charles already has shown himself to be a bit sort of snickety and a bit, and a bit sort of already lost his temper a couple of times. And fair enough, he's just lost his mother. That's fair enough, but that's his personality. And who knows what William would be like. And it's that sort of feeling of like, oh yeah, monarchy is a weird system. And it feels like that's the other thing that I've really struck me over the last few weeks, is just like, oh yeah, it is a mad system that just you get to be the monarch because of your family. That's it. There's no other.
Yeah.
Mark Steele wrote a brilliant thing about that, I thought, where he said, Mark Steele sort of wrote this lovely thing about people saying that the Queen is good at being the Queen are totally missing the point. The whole point of monarchy is it doesn't matter whether you're good at it or bad at it. You are the king or the queen. That's it. There's no interview process. There's no appraisal. There's no, we don't get to, the whole point is we don't get to vote and stuff. And so as soon as you actually start thinking about that, you go, oh yeah, no, that is mad,
You don't become, the professor at a university because your dad was the professor.
Exactly. Well, you say that. You say that.
Or at least I don't want the brain surgeon doing operations on my head.
Yeah. Let's not start talking about acting because that will because in the world of acting there's a lot of that.
Featured all that.
Welcome everybody to the Sunday Roast. We have a sensational lineup of comedy genius today, and I'm not talking about me and Matt. So we've got Matt. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Matt Green. I'm a comedian, an actor and writer. I've been doing comedy a long time, particularly stand-up. But over the last 2 or 3 years, I've started doing a lot of videos, particularly recently in the last sort of year or two. I've been doing lots of satirical videos, lots of sketches about the government and the response to COVID, and then the response to the financial crisis and all that kind of stuff.
So, Minister, the reaction to your mini-budget has been generally quite negative, hasn't it? Not true. I was talking to several economists earlier today who said our fiscal event was smashing, that I was looking very well, and have I been working out? The opinion polls have been pretty damning. That's because people don't know that we're going to create a high-wage economy.
By giving them pay rises?
God, no. We want people to set up their own businesses. Maybe build a local version of a hospital, or a fire station, or a police force. Because let's be clear, we have no money left to fund those.
Hello, my name is Nerine Skinner. I'm also a comedian, actor, writer, improviser, everything but master of none. I've been performing for a long time. Comedy is kind of something I've always been wanting to do. I've done a bit of stand-up in the past and then stopped doing it, then formed a comedy duo called Franks and Skinner. I went to Edinburgh for a few years and then went into a comedy cabaret trio, having trained in musical theatre. I sort of wanted to merge all of them together, but sort of similar to Matt in the sense that more very recently, it's all very new to me, I've come into this world of satirical comedy. I've always been creating sketches and just recently have formed a sort of parody version of Liz Truss, and and it's kind of blown up in a really cool and amazing way. So this is all very new to me, this world, but I'm enjoying and loving it.
It's a lot of fun watching your reasoning as to why Liz Truss couldn't curtsy properly. That was that was hilarious.
You're majestic.
Max?
Hi everyone, Max here from the Robespierre channel. So I talk about British politics and Brexit and the Tories in particular. And Alex, yourself?
I'm an author, historian, and YouTuber. My name's Political X or Alex. So welcome everyone, and let's just get straight into it. Is satire dead? I think there's quite a nice little segue there for Nerine with her her reasoning for. I'd love to know what the reasoning was for that clip. We're now going to have to show that clip, by the way, in this. How did you come up with a reason for Liz Truss not cursing properly because she didn't go to the loo? That was amazing.
I just couldn't believe what I was watching when I saw her do that. That I thought that's a real curtsy, and what does that look like? And immediately I just thought it just looks like she does really need the toilet, and I've been there. Not in such a high-profile situation, not meeting the king, but I can completely relate to needing the toilet in high-pressured situations. I normally start sweating and then need the toilet. I need to stop saying need the toilet. Anyway, and I just felt like I had to do that. And then on top of it, I thought, actually, lots of people, I kind of reading people's comments, and actually she does, is quite robotic. There's a sim-like character to her. What would happen if we really went down that road? And then it just became this thing that just kind of got out of control for like a 20-second clip or something. But every time I genuinely, when I first saw Liz Truss, I didn't really know much about it, what was going on. It was obviously way before she was Prime Minister. I thought that someone was doing a comedy better than me. So I just thought she's really, really funny. And that's all I thought. And then I realized she wasn't a comedian, she was a politician. And that's when I thought, I have to do something on this. And so for me, the satire isn't quite dead yet, but I can see that actually at the same time, the satire is real anyway, that it's hard to then parody that. I just find her really fascinating as a person. The comedy just kind of comes at me. So from my point of view, I feel like there's loads more to explore, but at the same time, sometimes it's hard.
It was definitely a difficult point with Boris Johnson and Donald Trump to come up with satire with what they were doing and saying. Like it was so out there and wacky, and some of the policies and some of the clips that you were seeing, it was almost like you couldn't write this.
Like you'll go person, woman, man, camera, TV. So they say, could you repeat that? So I said, yeah. So it's person, woman, man, camera, TV. Okay, that's very good.
Into a script or into a set, because well, we probably could do it into a set. Like Matt, what are your thoughts? Is satire dead within politics?
I hope not. Because that's what I've spent the last 3 years building up. No, I don't think it's dead. I think it depends what you mean by satire, to be boring, because I think satire can mean lots of different things to different people. I think the thing I've never thought about satire is that it can change anything. I think there are people who have this idea that satire is a sort of weapon against the establishment or something, and I think that's always been a bit of a wishful thinking. I think what it can do is hopefully be funny and entertaining and make people see people in a different way. I get a lot of messages saying, "Oh, thank you, you've made me feel better after a bad day," or "You've cheered me up after listening to these idiots, and now I can laugh at them." So I think it can change things in that it can make people feel, well, at least there's a bit of hope that not everyone's watching this and feeling depressed, but some people are watching it and finding it funny and finding a way of making it amusing and pointing out the idiocy of these people. So I don't think satire is ever dead. I think satire can live in any circumstance. And I think what you've pointed out, though, is definitely true, is that people like Trump particularly, and Johnson to an extent as well, really used the sort of tropes of comedy and used Donald Trump is a stand-up comedian. That his style is he's a mix between a sort of almost like a preacher and a stand-up. He's got that sort of just goes on and on and on, and it's repetitious and very. He's trying to whip his crowd up, sort of like a demagogic sort of preacher type character, but he's also funny to his crowds. Like, I don't think he's funny, but his crowds find him funny because he's cruel and he's sarcastic, and he's quite self-deprecating in a weird way. Like, I don't think at all he means it, but he sort of pretends to be like, well, people say that I'm not the greatest guy. Well, who am I to say? And that's sort of like, his audience like that. They find that amusing, and they think, oh, he's just like us, even though he clearly isn't. But he's found that way of playing a crowd. So yeah, I think there was that period, I think, where no one quite knew how to deal with him as a comedian. It's like, what?
And I know just the guy to do it. Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
He's already funny, so how do we make him funny? And I think what you have to do is find angles on it and find the point, find the sort of terrible things they're doing and attack those rather than attacking his voice or his, what he looks like or something. None of that's satirically interesting, but you can attack what he's doing. And I think that's, if you can find that, then that's great.
I was doing a hand movement when he was like, he couldn't drink. He cut for there's certain points where he can't drink a glass. He has to put his hand underneath, and he denied it. But it was a bit like, why would you? That's just such an unnatural. That's because your hand can't get to your mouth, which is freaking weird, to be honest. Or when he was like walking down the steps, and you could see
he can't walk downstairs.
Can't walk downstairs. Like he's like the opposite of a Dalek. Did we get? By the way, Matt, was that like a preview of your Donald Trump segues? Now are you going to be doing that for the next
No. I really hope I never have to do Donald Trump again. That'd be really nice.
Well, we weren't going to talk about it, but I mean, it does look like he's going to run again. I think he won't win. I think he'll split the Republican Party is my personal prediction.
He never gone away, he just left Twitter.
Yeah, and still touring, although apparently some of the tours have started to flop now. There have been rallies that have just been, no one's turned up. Max, what are your thoughts? I'm in Italy as well at the moment, and I've seen one magazine with the Queen's face on. And I appreciate it's all sort of done and dusted now with the mourning and the funeral and everything else. But what was the sort of reaction over in Italy and
It lasted about a day. It was really just about the funeral. On the day of the funeral, it was on Monday, I think it was. Really, it was just about that. I think there was a bigger outpouring of grief maybe in countries closer. So, for example, Italy doesn't have much of a connection to Britain. There are a lot of Italians living in Britain, of course, but the country itself doesn't have a great connection. But what was interesting is I did a video on it, and I got a bit of a backlash from it when I started talking about how the Irish media were reporting it. So they sent over a couple of journalists on the Monday to cover the funeral, and they received massive amount of backlash from the public saying you shouldn't be wasting money on this. This is a foreign power. It's nothing to do with us. And I actually defended the state broadcaster. I said, look, this is a big story. If a president died, the media would cover, the Irish media would go there. Just imagine a US president dies in a natural way, not an assassination, but due to natural causes. No matter whether it was a Republican or a Democrat, the Irish media would be covering it, and we would expect them to do that. But we in Ireland we have a long difficult history with Britain, so it was
really. This is the first I'm hearing.
So it was.
About that.
We can go into it in a little bit of detail later. It's understandable that many people would have very strong feelings on both sides about that, but from a clearly journalistic point of view, I believed it was necessary, and I'll probably get some backlash for that, for saying that as well. But in other countries, like I was looking also online about how other countries were reacting, and really it was just on the day. I think a lot of people didn't understand what was happening, and I don't think the feeling towards Britain during the mourning period was negative from pretty much anyone, but it was a sort of strange curiosity. It wasn't. It wasn't joking. There wasn't joking about it. It was really just, why are they doing that?
I found it interesting as well in the UK, because I think there were a group of people who also found it confusing and didn't know what was going on and were bamboozled. I mean, if you're an atheist, if you're a Republican, if you just don't care. I mean, it's interesting as well, because the outpouring seemed to be like, it was given the impression it was really big. It was a 14-hour queue and it was all along the way and they pushed away all the homeless people. But interestingly, her dad got more people turning up for the funeral, which I think is a bit of a surprise considering how long she's been on the throne. A couple of historical precedents as well. Matt, I'm sorry to tell you, there has been a situation in the past where they've had 3 kings in 1 year. So that was in Germany in the 1870s. So that could be interesting to see if that happens. And then, of course, on top of that, I think it's Ramses II. I think he might actually be a challenger for longest living monarch. Her father died, as I think, 70 years ago, I think it was.
Well, after, 52. I mean, I think, for me, I felt with it there was an interesting question of like how much of it was generated from people and how much of it was generated from the coverage, and it becomes a sort of a circle. People see the coverage and think, oh, that's important, and then they feel it must be important, and then the coverage it becomes sort of self-perpetuating, I think. And so as soon as the queue started becoming a thing, then it started becoming like a thing. Oh, well, I should maybe go to the queue. Should I go to the queue? And even I was thinking, I was a bit ill that week, and I had quite a lot of work on and stuff. And I was thinking, but there was even a tiny part of me going, should I go to the queue? Maybe I should. I don't really want to, but there's this sort of feeling of like, this is the only thing. This is the only time this will ever happen. There will never be a thing like this again, ever, probably. And so there was a part of me going, should I maybe do that? Because I live in London. I could do that. I mean, it sounds like a really horrible experience standing outside for 10 hours or whatever it was, but maybe that would be interesting. Maybe there'd be a sort of, and I think a lot of the people who were interviewed about it said it wasn't that necessarily that they were, I don't think necessarily people were devastated. I think some were, but it was more that it was a thing to experience. It was a historical
spiritual event. Yes.
Yeah. And also I think I don't think you can disentangle it from COVID. That we've had 2 years of being sort of stuck indoors, not allowed to see people, not allowed to go to funerals, not allowed to go to parties and weddings and all that sort of stuff. And then now there's this sudden moment of you're allowed to go to a thing and be somewhere and sort of show respect for it. And I think they all got sort of, tangled up in that. A lot of the people I think who went to it wanted to go to experience something, experience a big event with lots of other people, because that's clearly a human need, to be around other people. And that felt quite profound in some ways, even if the whole thing was a bit odd to look at. Like I did think there was something quite, as you say, almost spiritual about it.
It's quite an interesting description. I hadn't thought about it in the spiritual context. Nerine, would you have gone to the queue? Did that even cross your mind to do that? Or I can see it in your face.
No, it genuinely it did, and I think because I come from quite a mixed area where my mum always brought me up to sort of, she just was fascinated by the rules. I don't know how necessarily how she felt about them, but like we'd go to big things, you know, like the funeral or you know, there would always be an event that we would go to, and I just remember that, and I don't know necessarily where I kind of. Well, I was confused. I think that is the word that I would describe, because I was thinking about it. She's probably the most famous person in the world. I was like, I couldn't think of another more famous person than her. And whatever way you look at it, whether you are a royalist or you're not, or that can't be in my head. I couldn't challenge that. And for that reason, like you say, on a spiritual level or a more profound level, however you feel about it, it felt like I felt like I should do something, or I shouldn't, I don't know, I should stop for a moment, or there was a real sense of I understood all of these people's different opinions in a very short space of time. Like I respected the people who weren't happy about it, the people who were really devastated about it, and trying to work out my own weird, I don't know, it also brought up mortality. I'm going really deep here, but it just like a lot of questions about it, I suppose, just because she's been around in our lives for forever as well. So, but yeah, that the question about fame was one that really came up to me, because I just couldn't, I'm sure there are, but I just couldn't challenge that. And I thought that's quite amazing. And maybe, like you say, that's to do with the media coverage that we just didn't have back in the day, and that's made it so. But that was just quite an interesting discovery.
I think she must be the most famous woman in the world.
Yeah.
Like without.
Bigger than Jesus.
Well, yeah. The Beatles were bigger than Jesus. So.
Most famous woman who was until recently alive. I think.
Yeah, that's
a contemporary figure. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the Tories? Are they a joke, Matt?
I mean, I think yes. I think yes. I think.
I don't know. Sorry to interrupt, but I don't know if you heard this week. We've heard from people saying it was Labour's fault that Kwasi Kwarteng released this mini budget that crashed the pound, and things are recovering at the moment, but that's because the Bank of England have injected a huge amount of money into the economy. But sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
That's not a joke, is it? That's actually real. They were right. That's not satire. No. Go on, Matt. What were you going to say?
I mean, when you say satire is dead, I think that's the bigger problem, is that some of the Tory MPs are now doing my jokes before I can do them. Like they're sort of doing jokes, and I'm like, I was literally about to write that in a sketch, and now you've said that stupid thing that, and I sometimes, you know, and people sort of. That is one comment, you know, I get on videos is like, oh, you know, you don't have to do anything and you just have to write down what they say. And I think there's a bit more to it than that. But there are definitely days where it feels like that sometimes, where I'm just like, right, what is that ridiculous thing that someone's said? I'll just write that, and then I'll sort of I'll sort of find a funny sort of frame for it. But yeah, I think the problem the Tories have got now is that they have really whittled themselves down to the worst of themselves. Like I've never been a fan of the Tories, but there are people who, back in the day, and I'm only talking 3 years ago, who were kind of reasonably sensible. David Gauke and Rory Stewart and various others who, you know, you think, yeah, I don't agree with you on economics, but I think you're pretty bright and you know what you're talking about. And you also have, crucially, you have political instincts and you're empathetic and all those sorts of things. And now they've whittled away all of those guys because of Brexit, and now Johnson came in and sort of whittled away loads of other people who he didn't like, and now Liz Truss has come in and whittled away all the very few who are left who were vaguely sensible, the Rishi Sunak types, who again not big fan of at all, but at least vaguely understood economics. And now we've got this incredibly hardcore of proper headbangers who really believe in this very intensely right wing economic stuff. And they're mad. They're kind of a bit mad. It's just like you see these. That's for me. That's been the funniest thing, or sort of funniest / scariest thing of the last couple of weeks is seeing all these new Tories appearing on the news who are the new spokespeople for Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, and going, "Who are you? What have you been doing?" And they've obviously just been on the back benches waiting for their moment, and they're monstrously uncharismatic and phenomenally arrogant, and it's amazing watching them and thinking, wow, you've this is your moment, and you've really screwed it straight away, which is
like I didn't think somebody could be worse than Therese Coffey, and then we have Chloe Smith, who's just as bad.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Matt. I was saying, have you seen that picture of her with the cigar and the champagne, and it's spilt down her top, and you're like, "That's our health minister." it's like, what the hell? How have you found it all, Nerine? Are you able to? You seem to be coming up with plenty of stuff for Liz.
Yeah, well, it's similar to Matt in the sense that, like, every video that a few of them that I've released recently, people have then watched them back and then said, "Oh, you predicted this." And considering I don't come from an overly political background, and I'm learning as I go along with all of this, it's quite interesting because I feel like so are they, and I think that's almost making it even more fun because I can just. Like you said, mentioned earlier about like angles and having an angle on something, and it's like they're already providing comedy gold in what they're doing. That then you've got a challenge because then you've got to up that. But equally, like Matt was saying earlier, the thing of being able to entertain people and make them laugh amongst a ridiculous situation, I feel like is now needed more than ever. And I feel like I need to. Just find that angle on everything that happens because it's utterly ridiculous. It feels like it is a comedy series that we're watching unfold.
This one with really serious consequences.
Yeah.
It's like giving keys to a 10-year-old and letting them drive for the first time, but expecting them to go around London and the M1 and through the back streets without crashing. It's almost, as you said, I can't believe it's happened. And like the damage that they've done. You mentioned Labour. They've also blamed, the right-wingers came out and they were blaming Gordon Brown. That was David Frost. That's like a new one. It's Gordon Brown's fault that this is happening.
All Gordon, yeah.
It's all Gordon, obviously. It's interesting as well because they tend to go out of their way to try and blame Gordon Brown for the last crash in 2008. But if you listen to other world leaders and economists, they're like, no, he stopped it from being 1,000 times worse. And there have been movies made which starred Brad Pitt and Steve Carell, which literally show that it was the banking industry being greedy that caused the 2008 crash. And yet they're now going, yeah, let's make the banks greedy again because that'll bring in foreign investment. And it's like, no, it won't. You've totally tanked it. I think the IMF have been blamed. And now there's talks from some of the crazier right-wingers of like, let's just leave the IMF. And it's like, but that was one of the big bonuses. Like, Brexit was that we could deal directly with the IMF. and then of course, there's these like really shit Salem witch hunts that they seem to go on with Remainers. And they're like, yes, the Remainers. And as you just pointed out, Matt, Boris Johnson got rid of a load of them. Liz Truss will do the same. Like, there are no Remainers. It's just this fictitious witch hunt that they've created within the government. Max, what are your thoughts on all of this?
That's it, really. Just clip that.
Yeah.
Just clip that.
It just seems to get worse and worse because, like, when it came to who do we blame? Blame the Labour Party, blame Gordon Brown, blame as you said, the IMF, and that leads me into another question: where is John Redwood a comedian? Because I'm truly convinced that he's probably he has something on the side because he's completely insane with what.
My favourite theory I've heard recently is that Liz Truss is a very long-term Lib Dem undercover agent because she was with them. She was with them for a long time as a student and then, obviously became a Tory in her 20s. And I love the idea that she spent the last 30 years working deep undercover to fully destroy the Conservative Party from the inside, and leading to the next election where the Lib Dems will get another 30 seats or something, just like that. So.
There's some material for you, Nerine.
Yeah, thank you.
Smoke filled back.
Yeah,
rooms,
you can have that. You can have that.
But it leads me to the idea that Brexiteers will eventually, when Liz Truss crashes and burns and she is kicked out, what they'll say is, well, she was a Remainer. She didn't truly believe in Brexit. So we'll always it seems to be always coming back to Brexit. It's always this idea that we need to leave the EU, and all of the problems that existed before Brexit were because of the EU, and all the problems that have come after Brexit are because of the EU as well. We never seem to get away from that.
I've always thought that Brexit is basically communism, in that it will never be. Brexit is the same as communism in that it will never be. You can never disprove it because it's never been done right.
Yeah.
There'll always be someone saying, but if we'd done it this way,
Farage,
it would have been better. And if we hadn't, and communism's great. And I think it's exactly the same with Brexit. Until we get to this point, we haven't really done Brexit yet, and it will never. Brexit's just a city on a hill. It's never going to happen. It's never the Brexit they're talking about doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. It's a sort of dream.
It's like until Britain is fantastic and the streets are paved with gold and we have money trees in everyone's back garden, that's when Brexit's done. Basically, It's like it's got to be. That's when it's like complete.
But they're actually working against that, because what are they doing is they're creating a massive wealth divide. So they'll never actually get to the type of Brexit that they're talking about.
They just did quantitative easing again. They've just printed out a load of money to bail out Liz Truss's crazy policy. And it's like, well, that's what you did in 2008. And that's created a load of inequality. And then, Liz Truss got torn a new one on the BBC. Absolutely.
Local BBC. BBC.
It almost felt that a lot of them had just been waiting for that opportunity all their lives, and all of them were trying to one-up each other and trying to get her, and it wasn't that difficult. It was like, and she paused. Those pauses that in those clips, you think, that can't be real, can it? And then you go back to the live recording, it's like, holy shit, she didn't know what to say for like 10 seconds or 5 seconds, which is like, I've never heard of that from a politician. It's almost like she's had no training. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, she's very, very bad at pausing. She's very... Because my favourite moment was, not even yesterday, but was... we've all seen those sort of the pork markets and things, sketches, videos. But it was in her acceptance speech where she that joke from Boris Johnson is respected from Kiev to... was it Carlisle, wasn't it?
Carlisle.
And then she paused for ages, waiting for a laugh or a applause line, and it was like she was a robot who'd been told pause for 5 seconds after you do the joke. It's like when you teach stand-up, you have to tell people you've got to give people a bit of space to laugh, otherwise if you just keep talking, no one's ever gonna laugh. And it's like she'd taken that advice, but to the nth degree. It was extraordinary, and she just can't. It's like her brain doesn't work. I don't know. I don't understand it.
No, I did a comparison. I let Nerine come in a second, but I actually took that clip. Somebody had edited it and added the pause out for 2 minutes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Cutting back to Rishi Sunak, but I took her original one and I compared it to, for example, Tony Blair, and the response Tony Blair. Tony Blair was a completely different character. Nerine, what was your take on that?
No, I was just going to say that the pauses, and because I did a sketch about the politics for dummies, it feels like exactly that. She's just been told, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. But also I like the idea that every time I listen to her, it's like she's learnt a new word. Yes. Yesterday was unconscionable. She just kept saying that throughout the that was a new one of vocabulary for her, and also just the same sentence. I don't accept the premise of this question, but there'd come the pause, and then there'd come this. Okay, I'm going to say something completely unrelated to this, and I think regardless of what you feel or whatever, it's just think this is just baffling. This is so confusing to hear someone with this much power not making any sense or understanding that the premise of the question. It's
for me, and then I'll let Alex. Sorry, for me, it's much more important policy than personality. But I think in that moment she had to reassure the markets. She had to appear confident, and that's why that's why it's necessary also to have a strong personality as a politician. As I said, for me, it's much more. I care more about policy, and that's why I really didn't understand why people were voting for Boris Johnson. At the end, I did understand it was about personality and charisma, but there was no policy. It was just get Brexit done. But I think it is important that going forward, we consider policy over personality. But as I said, in that moment, you needed to appear confident, and you can't go and put in 2-minute pauses. Alex, sorry, you wanted to say something?
Could you imagine Churchill doing that speech about we'll fight on the beaches? We'll fight him in the beaches.
Well, funny you mentioned that. I had a bit which I was doing in my stand-up about how Johnson would, because it was Johnson's resignation speech where he said, "Them's the breaks." And he had all this kind of very slangy stuff about, well, them's the breaks. And I put all that stuff into Churchill's speech as though that's what he would do. We will fight them on the beaches. We will never surrender. But, if we do, them's the breaks. You win some, you lose some. And it, because I think that's the problem with Johnson is he never sounded serious. Whereas Liz, he was fundamentally an unserious person. Like there was no sense, even, and that was why he was so bad at COVID and everything. He just couldn't be serious about anything.
I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody. You'll be pleased to know.
And it feels like Liz Truss is someone who feels like she's almost the opposite, that she's very serious, but with nothing else. Like she's got no hinterland. There's no sort of humour or personality or humanity or something. She's like, I've got a thing I'm trying to do. And that's it. And there's no, it feels like she is almost like the mirror image of Johnson in that way, that she's kind of, he was all bluster and all like telling people in the room what they wanted to hear, regardless of whether it was true or not.
There will not be checks. There will not be checks. I speak as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and a passionate unionist. There will not be checks on goods going from Northern Ireland to Great Britain. Because we're the government of the United Kingdom and we will not institute or implement or enact such checks.
True or not. And she's almost the opposite of like, she's just saying, this is what we're doing, without any sense of, I have to persuade anybody. Because that's the thing about her, is that no one voted for her. like this is what's so weird about it. Like there hasn't been a general election. There hasn't been, none of these policies have any kind of mandate apart from a few tens of thousands of Conservative voters, members rather. And so it's like she's got the confidence of Margaret Thatcher at her height when she'd won 3 elections and, had battered the Labour Party into submission. She's got that confidence, or she's pretending to have that confidence, that kind of level of confidence and arrogance, and without any of the backstory. It's so bizarre.
No, it was just quick. You mentioned about the keys, a child like being 10 or something. I like the idea in my head that she's got the keys to something. Like a child, you walk into something and then go, don't know what to do with this now, but I'm here. That's the vision I see. Try and create.
Well, it's the phrase, the image that I've heard a lot of people use about Brexit is it's the dog that caught the car. And I feel like that's what's happened with Liz Truss on an even bigger scale, that like she's always wanted, she and Kwasi Kwarteng have like had these theories about how the economy should work for years. Like, this is what we need to do. And now they're getting the chance to do it. And they're like, it didn't work. Like, we pressed the buttons and those buttons were the wrong, turns out, no, that was bad. And now they're having to kind of work out what they're going to do next, and that's the scary bit. It's like, what are they going to choose next?
I don't believe they've got a backup plan. I think there would just be that level of arrogance behind them that they would just, because they've already come out and started blaming everyone else, which is highly narcissistic. It's like, no, I'm great. It's everyone else that's got the problem, and it's like you just destroyed our economy. Like, you almost wrecked the pension scheme. There were claims coming out from I think it was the Financial Times, saying that if the Bank of England hadn't stepped in, we would have had a similar thing with our pensions as 2008 happened with Northern Rock. It would have been a collapse. And they're going, and like, people at like local radio are having to point out basic economics to them. Like, you've just increased the prices of mortgage, which eradicates the savings you've made on the gas and electric. And they're like, I hadn't thought of that. You could clearly see, like, the pause was like, I hadn't thought of that. It's like, fuck, you're in charge.
Is it they hadn't thought of it, or do they don't care? That's what I don't quite know. Like, it's like whether they have thought about it but aren't interested.
It was interesting you brought up the conspiracy theory, because I wonder if Morgan Doris got her in to just, you know, she's like a sacrificial lamb. She's put in to be like, you know, a crap Tory that no one really likes. Chuck her in and get her in, and then, you know, we'll have 4 years out. Labour will have a catastrophe and we'll come in. It's almost like, have the Lib Dems got a secret policy and the Conservatives got a secret policy? And they've
She's a triple agent
for chaos. Like, it's totally nuts. So I've got 2 questions for everyone to end on, because we're talking about the return of Boris. What Prime Minister would you like to be in charge next? Out of all the Prime Ministers that have been in the past that are alive today, who would you most like? So that would be Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, and we'll say Liz Truss. Who would you most like out of that 6 to be the next Prime Minister? I'm going to throw that to Max first. Who would you like the most?
Well, obviously Tony Blair would be the best choice, because it'd be somebody who I don't agree with all of his policies, obviously, but if you look at some of the things that he brought in when he was Prime Minister, but it's about this seriousness. There was a real seriousness behind him. You could probably apply that to David Cameron somewhat, but
not Gordon Brown. I think I missed him in.
I think the problem for Gordon Brown was there was a little bit of a lack of charisma, and especially as we saw this week, you need somebody confident and you need somebody who's able to speak. Maybe people will disagree with me on that, but I think let's park Iraq War for a moment. But I think Tony Blair would have been would be the best.
Just ignore that.
Yeah, you just ignore like that. 90% of why people hate him. But I think somebody with that sort of confidence would be necessary. In a video I uploaded this week, I was saying what Liz Truss should do now. And I said if she doesn't resign herself, she should sack Kwasi Kwarteng and put in somebody like a technocrat. So an ex-governor of the Bank of England, or an economist, not Patrick Minford, a real one, but somebody who can show confidence, somebody who has respect of the markets, somebody who can demand this sort of respect. And I think Tony Blair, probably people will disagree with me, but I think Tony Blair could achieve that.
Calm the tensions down with the EU, maybe?
Yes.
Nerine?
I feel like I can only answer this on a purely comedic level, because if Liz Truss isn't in, I don't know what I do. Like
fair enough.
Everything's over for me. And a mixture of Theresa May and her dancing as well is, that's an added bonus. Maybe they could do a duet.
Oh my God, Dancing with the Stars. That would be together. That would be a partnership. Max?
Well, like Nerine, like on a comedic level, I think it's got to be Truss or Johnson back, because they just give us so much material to work with every week, and it means that we're never going to run out of stuff to talk about in our videos. I mean, I think if I was being serious for a second, I probably would say Gordon Brown, because I think this is a situation that does require seriousness, and also I think I think Tony Blair. I think it's quite hard to park the Iraq War, and I think what also that means is that represents the side of him that is the kind of messianic, sort of I'm right and I don't care what other people think about me side. Which I think I think he did a lot of good things domestically, but that the war represented that side of him, which I think was very negative. And I think Gordon Brown is one of the most unlucky politicians we've had for many years, because as you say, he came in at a difficult time, and then he had the financial crisis, which was, yeah, if you read Barack Obama's book or any of the other accounts of the financial crisis, he was hugely important and really did settle the markets and settle the financial the various different countries and get everyone to work together to stop the 2008 crisis being even worse than it was. And he also now works, has a charity and works in various sort of, socially responsible ways. And he's written a lot about how child poverty needs to be addressed better and all this kind of stuff. So I think he's someone who I feel like he deserves another go. Like he would be someone who I think he would, and he is very charismatic. If you watch him he was one of those politicians who I think was never very comfortable on TV, but if you see him in an interview situation or in a slightly more relaxed style, he is very funny and warm and all those things. So yeah, I look at him and I think, yeah, he could be, he would be able to talk to the right people and understand what to do, and would take the temperature down. But unfortunately, the Tories did a very effective job with the connivance of the Lib Dems just after 2010 of blaming him for everything, even though it had really very little to do with it. He was actually trying to fix it rather than. And I know that there were things he did as Chancellor about reducing bankers, regulations on banking, all that kind of stuff, which did cause problems. But it's not like the Tories wouldn't have done that themselves. They were quite happy they voted for it.
A new coin's just come out showing Prince Charles's face, which frankly I don't want to look at. So who would you rather have on the coin? And they have to be alive. There can't be anyone from the past.
I think so, for me, Matt? it's got to be Stormzy.
Oh, good shout.
Just because he does a lot of great stuff. He's a brilliant sort of ambassador for British music, and it would piss off the Daily Mail so much. It would be worth doing, I think.
Oh, that's a tough one to top. Nerine?
I don't know why this has come to mind. I'm just gone with the first name that came to my head, Craig David.
Craig David!
He's gone for a while. Where is he? He had a good 7 days song, 7 days, 7 coins.
Oh. And Max?
Meghan Markle, because it would piss off Piers Morgan and gammon Brexit news so much. So it would be wonderful. Every time they put their hand in their pocket, they'd have to look at and pick it out. They'd have to look at.
On that note, thank you very much, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hail the lava lamp. He's no longer with us. Because I was also going to ask, where was Liz Truss hiding, and find out what your funniest answers were for that, because I think that would have been quite good. I was going to say fridge, just Nerine. Where was she hiding for the last 4 days?
My main theory is that the sinkholes that have been created through fracking, she's actually that's why she's doing fracking, to hide in them. Things get too much. They're her secret place. Either that or opening up a pork market.
Matt?
I was going to say a cupboard, because it's a bit cold now for fridges.
Save on the electric bill.
Yeah. Well, she can claim it on expenses. Matt?
I mean, I think possibly she's just trapped in her own flat and couldn't find her way out.
It's happened before.
It's happened before. She couldn't find her way out of that press conference. So,
On that
Bye.
Yeah, free speech is.
The only things we edit out is if you slightly repeat yourself, I'll edit that out. And if you do ums, ahs, and pauses, that all gets cut out as well. Just to
no. We need to keep those in, because Liz Truss likes to use those.
Yeah. Can we be clear when we're acting doing ums and ahs?
Yeah. I'll make the screen go blank, and then I have like frog eyes pop up in the background, little cricket noises, rivets.